Welcome to Actions and Limits. My name is Justin Atherton. I'm the Peak Performance Consultant for Confidence Unchained. With me as always is Paul Fortune. Paul is a mindset coach and the founder of A Call to Action. And together, we make Actions and Limits. Show, the podcast where we talk about the actions we can take and the limits we create. Make sure to give us a like or subscribe to us on YouTube or whatever podcast channel that you are listening on. Paul, another week, another great guest. I know Patty's a personal friend of yours. And how long have you guys known each other? Where did you guys meet?
We met at Disneyland. We both worked together. We worked at, if people are familiar with Disneyland, I'm sure most people are. We worked at Coke Corner together, which is on Main Street. It's the Coke shop. It's the last food shop on the left going into the park.
You guys have known each other for a while then, huh?
Yeah, over 20 years now. So, I knew her when I was in high school, and she's, I think she was a little bit out of high school at the time. But we're, around the same age. But the reason why I wanted to bring her on is she's a no excuse kind of person. I know a little bit about her background, a little bit about her upbringing. It wasn't always sunshine and roses. But when I would work with Patti, at the time we called her Claudia. I think her first name actually is Claudia, and I think her middle name is Patti. But I think I guess her family used to call her Patti, and she's rolling with Patti now. So Patti. So I've gotten used to it, but I'm used to calling her Claudia. But anyway, it's not, sidetrack. But she never ever gave excuses, and she was always upbeat. When I work with her, always a personality, always striving for excellence. Even at working at Disneyland, I think she became a manager at Disneyland, a high level that most people that, they're just going to work there just to, get through school. She was getting through school and she was moving up the ranks, where she was working, 50 hours a week. So I'm like, geez, okay,
sounds like
more power to her.
Driven, or even was back then. And, from her bio, I'm looking at, it sounds like she's continued that. So I'm excited to bring her on and pick her brain and see what she has to share with our audience. So let's do that. Let's go ahead and bring her out. So Paty Riquelme is a GTM leader at MuleSoft, a Salesforce company, and she has more than 20 years of combined experience in sales and marketing from Mars, Cargill, Conagra Brands, and the Clorox Company. She's a trailblazer within her family. She was the first to attend college and thus paved the way for her siblings. After a successful sales career, she completed an MBA to gain a broader business foundation, which ultimately led to her pivot from sales into marketing. Patti is a SoCal Latina living this chapter of her life in the Bay Area in pursuit of optimal utility and greater societal contribution. So let's welcome out Paty Riquelme to the show. So Patti, welcome to the show. We're glad to have you on the Actions and Limits podcast. So welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, your bio is pretty impressive. You got more than 20 years of experience in marketing. Tell us a little bit how you got into this profession. Like what moved you in this direction?
Yeah, so this is actually the second part of my career. I started my career in sales and never thinking that I'd go into sales. I went to grad school thinking I'd go into business. I really wanted to understand consumer behaviors or just how people behaved and why, and ended up in sales. And after many years of doing that really well, I just felt unsatisfied. I felt like there was always something more that I could do. So I decided to go back to grad school because I wanted to get a stronger business foundation. And through that, I realized, okay, marketing is where I'm supposed to be. Marketing is that strategy meets sales enablement, where you're really trying to guide the vision of where to go. And that's how I ended up here.
Patti, let me take you back in time, back to when you were a young little girl growing up in Southern California. What values did your parents and your siblings give to you, for you to be so successful later in life?
I would say honesty. I think there's so many layers to that. I think it's having experiences in my own family where there was dishonesty and learning from that. Also feeling like creating trust in relationships, that was super valuable for me in sales. And I would say that it comes down to learning from the good and the bad, because my life wasn't roses growing up, but there was a lot of really, really good stuff. And so taking some of those negative experiences, some of those obstacles, and taking the time to understand what was the root cause, what happened, what were the intentions behind it, and how does that change the dynamic of the relationship so that it wouldn't do it again, hopefully. And if I saw other people behaving a certain way, I could say, okay, I've been here before. But all of that helped me in building relationships and others, and understanding that trust is so critical and so important.
I think it's a similar message. We had Mark Schaefer on the show with us recently, and he really talks about that consumer relationship and just really building that trust with people. And maybe you can touch on this too. It's like, how has some of that changed over the years, where consumers don't trust the sales pitch anymore? It's all about that human relationship, right? So
Absolutely.
learning that, as a young age, like that trust and that honesty, that certainly carries over into, customer relations, right?
It does, but I think it also carries over into leadership style. So when I think about my leadership style, I don't think about it often. When I think about my character, I think what you see is what you get. I'm pretty authentic. Paul's known me for a while. And
over 20 years.
Don't age us. But yeah, I think that what you see is what you get with me, but I do it in such a genuine way because I really do care about other people, and I care about what we're trying to accomplish together, hoping that we all learn something from it. And now being on the marketing side and building those relationships with the consumer through the sales team is even more powerful, because I'm thinking about, how do I enable a salesperson to go out there and give a powerful message in a way that resonates, but also in a way that feels right for them. So now I work for Salesforce. I work for MuleSoft, which is a brand of Salesforce. And Salesforce is all about trust. Your companies are empowering Salesforce, and it's a symbiotic relationship. Like, the companies are giving Salesforce their data. Salesforce is taking that data and empowering them to do their business more efficiently. And there's got to be a lot of trust there, because consumers, as we've seen, have been done wrong in so many different ways. And that's just on a business standpoint, where you're not really dealing with the other person. If you call customer service, you're just getting someone. You don't know how their day is. And so when you lash out on them, and we can talk more about that in a minute, I think that people just want to have that relationship with one another. And with the company, it's so important, because we're entrusting them with so much data, particularly more and more these days. So yeah, I think it's just being authentic, being genuine, being honest. It's so important in being successful in life.
Take me back to your undergrad at USC, sales and marketing. During that time, especially when you first got into USC, was that your goal when you got out, graduating? Did you see yourself in sales and marketing, or did you see yourself doing something else?
No, and like Justin said, the trust in a salesperson has evolved, where when I was at USC, I thought, oh my gosh, I never want to be a salesperson, because I felt like they were so slimy. And my style is very consultative. I really want to understand. I do believe in my product, but I want to understand a customer situation and where they're trying to go. And I think of myself as a consultant. I go in and I want to understand. And I'm very comfortable telling a customer or a prospect, I hear you say X, Y, and Z. This is what my product does. I don't think that we're a good fit. But if at any point in the future you feel like this is right or something's changed, I would love to talk to you because I think we have a great product. So that's how my career started, me thinking there's no way I'll never do that. But it was one call that changed my career. I was working at USC. I was at the Career Center. And so I was doing marketing and event planning. So essentially I was recruiting the companies that would come and recruit the students. And I really enjoyed it. I was learning a lot, had a lot of autonomy. And I get this call from this recruiter, this headhunter. And I had to politely tell him, I appreciate everything you're trying to do, but we don't work with headhunters here. We want to work directly with the companies. And he said, well, it's just too bad because Mars, the candy company, is a great company and we would love to hire USC students. And I said, I'm just so sorry, I can't help you. And I was about to hang up and I have no idea where this came from, but I got this like sudden rage of energy. And I was like, but listen, Bill, since I've got you on the phone, I actually think I'd be very interested in this role. Do you think that would you be willing to look at my resume? Would you be willing to entertain a conversation? And he said, I've really enjoyed our conversation and I appreciate your honesty and just how you've handled this. He said, I'd be happy to. That turned into an 8-year career at Mars that I really think set me up for success. So I never thought I'd end up there, starting in sales, but I'm so thankful that I just listened to my gut and took that risk and just spoke up for myself because I needed to be my own advocate. Listen, no one's going to advocate on behalf of us. And if you do have an advocate, hold them close, but they'll take the role of a sponsor, a coach, a champion for you, but no one is a better advocate for you, for yourself, than you.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just being prepared for those type of conversations, I think that's a huge key. When you're in that moment, you're like, you have that chance to like step outside your comfort zone, right? And you're like, hey, let's do it, rather than saying, oh, maybe I'm not prepared or maybe I'm not qualified enough. It's just like, hey, let's see what happens with this. It may go well, it may not go well, but just being prepared to have those type of conversations, right?
Yeah, I think that's the hardest part. And the way I honestly, when I got off the phone, I was like, what did you just do? Like, talk about some balls. Like, I can't believe I did this. But I thought, well, worst he can say is, no, Patty, we're not interested. I really want to look at a broader pool of candidates. But he said yes. And so I thought, well, there's a win. If it doesn't turn into anything, if it doesn't turn into a job offer, that's fine. I'm glad that I spoke up. And that's something that's continued with me as I've progressed in my career. I haven't always spoken up. I haven't always felt comfortable to say something, but there have been numerous times where I have, and I'm so grateful that I did.
As knowing you as long as I have, I've always known you as an overachiever, and I remember having a conversation with you when we, if the audience doesn't know, we used to work at Disneyland together. That's how I know Patty. And I had a conversation with you one time. We were just talking about, you at the time you were still at USC, and we were just talking about other schools and stuff. And I don't know what other schools you were. I think there was other schools that you were accepted to. One of the other schools was UCLA, and you were like, oh yeah, I got into that. And it was kind of like, like nonchalant. Oh yeah, I got into UCLA, which, obviously is a very, very hard school to get into. Yeah. Where did you, so obviously you did a lot of hard work in high school. Where did you get this fire in your belly at such a young age, knowing that you wanted something great for yourself?
It comes down to life situations and taking them and running with them. So like I mentioned earlier, some of my earlier life wasn't super easy. So my dad left our house when I was about 15 years old. So sophomore year of high school. So you and I met when I was probably, I think I was already in college when you and I met.
Yeah.
But so those last 2 years of high school, which are super critical because that's when you're taking your SATs and ACTs and trying to figure out where you're going to go to school and where you're going to apply. I had this fire in my belly because I had seen my mom, who was a stay-at-home mom, raising 3 kids. When my dad left, she had nothing. She didn't have a job. She barely spoke English. She had a high school education, but from Mexico. And so as a daughter of immigrant parents, it was just totally different. It wasn't like I had friends whose dads knew somebody or had friends that were like, yeah, I have siblings that went to college and here's the path that you follow. I didn't know what this looked like. And so I was looking at my peer set, trying to assimilate as best as I could. But the fire in my belly came from feeling like I never want to be put in a situation where I don't have options. I want to take control of my personal, financial, and security situation, because there were honestly points in our lives where we just didn't know where we were going to get our next meal. And so it was humbling for me to get into these schools, and I may have said it so nonchalantly because I maybe didn't want to go to UCLA because I chose USC, but I did get into some great schools, and it was because I had like college counselors and in high school that were coaching me along the way. That was pretty powerful. Could I name them now? No. I have like a faint visual image of who one of them was, and I can remember his car, but because he parked right in front of the building, but I don't remember. But I do appreciate everything that he did to help get me here, because I had the fire. I just didn't know what to do with it. And he helped.
That's crazy, because you could have gone the opposite way. You could have went the total opposite way with your situation that you were in. You could have went way, maybe into drugs or whatever, but you chose to go the opposite way and to move forward. I think you have a brother that's older than you. Did he help you in that transition? I think you went to USC. He went to USC too, but I think you went to USC before him, right?
So I have an older brother. I have a younger brother and a younger sister. I was the first in my family to go to college. And so my older brother had done a little bit of junior college, but didn't really pave the way for me. My brother couldn't just get it together. I feel like every family has one, I got 2, the brothers that just couldn't get it together. And they have great successful careers now. But at the time, my brother wasn't that example for me. I became that example for my younger brother and my younger sister. And when I went back to grad school a few years ago, my older brother was so inspired that he was like, you know what? I've put off getting my bachelor for so long. I'm going to do it. He said, and I'm not just going to do that. I'm going to go get an MBA too. So he did this at 45. So had already been managing his own businesses. He's a serial entrepreneur, just has a lot of energy for that. Something that I just can't do. I feel like it's too risky, but if it works for you, great. And he went back to school, and he just graduated from Pepperdine this 2019, graduated with his MBA. So I'm really, really proud of him. But I think it's just, we don't know how our behaviors are going to influence one another, and some for the positively and some negatively, but we are an example for other people.
Did you have a role model, maybe a celebrity or a public figure, in high school that you're like, oh, you know what? That's the type of person I want to be.
I'm laughing because I was such a Disney nerd in college and high school. So for me, Walt Disney and his vision and his dream was something that really fueled me. My husband's still like, why do you have that big box of Disney junk in the garage? I'm like, it's going to be worth something someday. You can't, we're not getting rid of it. He's like, sure. But to me, that was very inspirational. I'm less of a Disney nerd now, but I'm still inspired by the vision that he was trying to create of having this place where people can come and just take themselves away from reality. And I think right now, particularly with this pandemic that we're going through, being able to take ourselves away and just live in this fantasy world for a moment is great, but also being able to come back to reality is just as important. We can't always live in fantasy land, literally. So I took a lot of inspiration from him and the artists and the creative minds that work to bring his vision to life. I think aside from that, I don't really have like this one person that I now think is like super inspirational. For me, it's now about, in the last several years, it's been about living my life to its maximum capacity. So maximum utility, meaning I have a skill set. I believe in God. I'm a Christian, and I believe that God gave me skills, and he's given me experiences in life to upskill, to try new things, to learn from them, to fail. And all of those have been interesting. Some of them have been more painful than others. But through that, that's where this belief and this drive comes from now, because I believe God didn't put me on this earth to just be where I am today. I always want to strive for more. And early on in my relationship with my husband, he would always say, like, I remember distinctly early on, we must have been dating like a year or two in, and he was like, when is enough going to be enough? He's like, you always want más, which is a Spanish word for more. He's like, you always want más, 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 más. He's like, when is it enough? And I was like, it's not. And it's not because I know I'm capable of more. And I feel like if you're capable of doing more, then why are you settling for where you are? You don't need someone to inspire you. You can be your own inspiration. You just need to want it. And whatever that desire comes from, take it and be okay with it shifting. Like I said, I was a Disney nerd, and Walt Disney was my inspiration way back when, but now it's driven by a greater being. And my daughter is part of what gives me that drive now. It's this yearning that I want to be more for her. I want to be a positive example. I want to demonstrate to her what it looks like to try. It's not about being successful. It's not about having the title or the salary. It's just about demonstrating to her that I have skills. I'm going to use them because I can and I should.
Seems like it's really about finding the why behind why you do everything you do. And like you said, I think it's really important to realize that things shift over time. Your why can, change, that why can disappear. And so I think it's really important to be aware of that and go, just because you're no longer motivated to do something, it's like, well, maybe I need to rethink it, and like, what is my motivation to continue on doing that? So that's pretty powerful, like, how self-motivated you are, because a lot of people can't get that.
But so you're getting all the roses, you're not hearing all the thorns, right? Sure. So let's talk about some of the thorns, because when I made the decision to go back to grad school and make a career shift, I was taking a pay cut. I was moving from SoCal, which I love, like I bleed SoCal, and I moved to Northern California. So I moved to Northern California, took a massive pay cut and an increased cost of living. And there were many moments over the last several years where I would tell my husband, why the F are we here? And he'd look at me like, we're here because of you, but you know why we're here. And it was part of a bigger plan. But even in making those decisions, it was tough. There were moments where I was just in tears, where I was frustrated, where I was mad. I was angry at some of the risks that I had taken. And especially when I got to see my peer set doing so well by my standards of them being successful, right? That was really hard for me because it was a punch to the gut. But I knew all along that if I could tough it out, it would be so worth it in the long run. And this recent pivot for me from consumer goods into tech, I'm 3 weeks in and I just know, oh my gosh, this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I'm so thankful for all the bumps and bruises along the way, because I don't know that I'd be so thankful and grateful had I not seen the ugly side of things. And I should say, Clorox is not a bad company. That is by no means what I want to say about the last few years. It's that where I was, what I needed to learn, the skills that that I needed to build. It was tough to do that because of where I wanted to be mentally, but that was still where I needed to be. And I think that's hard sometimes.
Yeah, it's a tough realization sometimes for people to know that those struggles and pitfalls, when you come out on the other end, it makes whatever you were doing more worth it, rather than if it was just handed to you or if it was just an easy journey. Then it was like, oh, well, that was easy, I could do that again. And that may not be the case. So that it's always great lessons to learn along the way for that.
Yeah.
Well, keeping with the Disney theme, if I could wave a magic wand to you and you could see yourself 5 years from now, what would that look like?
I was thinking about this the other day because I wrote a 5-year vision about 4 years ago, and most of those things have come to life, have manifested themselves, but one of the critical things hasn't. And what I hope in the next 5 years, not hope, what I know is going to happen, and I know that this is going to happen because I'm so ready to put it in motion. I want to move back to Southern California because my heart and my family are here, and I just know that this is home. And I'm a firm believer in build it and they will come. So I feel like I knew that I needed to move away, but I'm going to come back and I'm going to make my career here. Second, I would love to be in a higher senior leadership role, whether that's at a small organization or a small division within a large organization. Like I said, I'm really enjoying where I am today. I can see myself growing there tremendously. I can see myself contributing and continuing to learn. And those two things are very important to me. So when I think about career-wise where I'll be, I don't want to tell you this is the company and this is the size and this is what I'll be selling or marketing. I want to tell you that I want to be in a role at a company where I can contribute, I can learn and grow, and the product is just making people's lives better. That to me is critically important. And when it comes to family, 5 years down the line, I think 2 years ago, I would have told you, I want kids, I want multiple kids, and I want a bigger house and all these things. I think I'm good. We've got one and she's amazing and she's a lot of hard work, but she's awesome. And I'm just grateful for the one that we have, and I'm good. I just want to be able to spend more time with my family.
You said a lot of great things in there. I like how you caught yourself. You said, I hope this. You're like, no. Let me change that. I know I'm going to accomplish this. That's a huge mindset shift there, to catch that in yourself. And then also the fact that you said you want to work with a company that the product is making people's lives better. I think that's something that Warren Buffett does when he invests. He's like, I invest in things that change people's lives, make a huge impact. And so looking to work for a company that does that, that's a huge goal to work for, and would probably be a good work environment if you're working for a company that's actually doing that. So it sounds like you've got a pretty clear vision on what you want to do with your life, and that's pretty amazing, Patty.
Thanks. So when I was at Clorox the last few years, I worked for their business to business division, and right now that is even more important. So the products that they sold to were for hospitals, schools, office buildings. And so you're talking about the professional products that are doing the tougher jobs that we need. And even though that work was so valuable and did and does make people's lives better, my heart still wasn't in it. And so I think it's important to be able to say, yes, that's still good, but it's not me. And the way that I make it relatable is I tell people, it's kind of like when you've met the right guy and he looks great on paper and you're like, but he comes from a good family, he's financially stable, loves what he does, great with kids. And you're like, but there's just no chemistry there between us. And that's what it was for me. So we needed a breakup. I broke up with Clorox.
Obviously, you have an A personality and you're extremely driven. So obviously, you spend a lot of time at work. So talk to me about your work-life balance, because I'm sure that's got to be a struggle for you.
It is. So pre-baby, I would say pre-husband, I was go, 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 go. I traveled a ton for work. I was rarely home. When we started dating, they would call me his weekend girlfriend because I was gone Monday through Thursday. And then it started to shift once we got together. Then I started working less on the weekends, working less at night. When the baby came, my schedule just flipped upside down. And what I mean by that was I was doing an hour and a half commute each way to work. So I was losing time there. And what ended up happening is I would leave early. My husband would take baby duty. I'd leave the office early. So I'd leave the office like 3:30, 4 o'clock so that I can do my hour and a half commute home. I'd get home, help put her to sleep, play with her a little bit, give her a bath, and then we'd have dinner. And honestly, it was dinner, but sometimes we didn't even talk because we didn't want to be loud for the baby. It was rough. And then we'd both hop on our laptops again for another few hours at night. So it's rough, but it works for us and it's working for now. We try to take the time and really interact with each other when we are together and try to be physically present. Sometimes one will look at the other and say, hey, phones down. And so we'll put the phones away. And even if it's just a 15-minute conversation, sometimes we'll just go out on the balcony and have a drink. Sometimes it's just a club soda, but it's just that time to decompress. But my schedule is just more compartmentalized. And I find that I'm so efficient when I do that though, because, and I learned this in grad school. I was going to school full time and I was going to work full time. And so I didn't have time for BS. I honestly was like, every minute of every day, I knew what I was doing. And if someone was talking to me, I was like, get to the point. And it wasn't like, get to the point. But in my mind, I was like, this is a really unhelpful conversation. How do I speed it along? And so you just learn tricks along the way. But for me now, it's being able to put it in buckets and be okay with it. I know that this is not forever and COVID's not really helping it, but we're making it work. At least I no longer have an hour and a half commute. And so I'm spending more time with my daughter, with my husband, and more quality time at work too.
That's good. It's good to be able to compartmentalize, like you said, and be able to like go, okay, hey, now this is what I'm focused on here. Now this is what I'm focused on here. And like you said, being able to say, hey, let's put our phones down for a minute, focus on each other. You know, sometimes you have to schedule that time with each other, right? Be like, hey, at 7 o'clock, you know, we're putting down our laptops and we're gonna like spend some quality time. So, and it's not a bad thing to have to schedule that stuff in, but just realizing that you need those different things in your life and need that. I think that's really important for some people to take away and realize that it's okay to have that as long as you're really in the moment whenever you're, you know, interacting with someone. If it's at work, be 100%. If it's at home, be 100%, right? Not that in between pieces. So
and what works for us too, sometimes when we sit down for dinner, he'll look at me and he'll say, is it okay if I watch something on TV right now? And I'll be like, yeah, that's fine. It's because we are both, we just need to decompress, that we have no more to give to each other. And so it's this idea of, I've got to fill up my own tank before I can give to you. And so being able to ask for permission and be able to forgive and just understand and say, yeah, that's fine. It's not a big deal. Versus him immediately popping play on his iPhone. And I'm sitting there going, hey man, remember me? You married me a few years ago. Let's chat.
It's a communication, right? You know, just being like, hey, I'm done with this conversation, Patty. I'm going to turn on this video for a little bit and tune out, right? But
yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Have you given up the reins a little bit? Meaning, have you been finding a babysitter every now and again to have some alone time and maybe a date night, or how does that all work?
Pre-COVID, yeah, but we're not prescriptive about it, meaning that sometimes he'll be on his computer and he'll randomly look up and say, hey, so-and-so's coming to concert. Do you want to go? And in my mind, I'm like, no, one, two, when is it? But what I actually say is, sure, yeah, when is it? And as long as there's no conflict, I'm like, let's do it. Because to me, that's like, it's an activity. It gets us out of the house. It's something that we both enjoy doing. But even if my immediate answer is like, no. So we're not prescriptive about it. We're just kind of go with the flow, and it works.
Why is your reflex no?
Because I'm tired from the day. I'm like, oh, I have to put on makeup. I have to stay up past 10 o'clock. I can't wear my stretchy pants. It's honestly just part of it's also the idea of I don't want to leave my daughter. Now I'm more okay with it. I also think it's very healthy for us to have that time together. So I know it's the right thing to do, but I think my initial response really comes from, I'm just tired. That's not what I need right now, but I know I'm going to enjoy it later.
Cool.
So you've brought up the COVID and the pandemic a couple of times. How do you see like your profession, like what has shifted within that and how do you see it moving forward?
That's a really good question. I think if anybody had a magic ball into the future, they'd be printing out bills. I will speculate that this is going to go on for a little bit, and that's on the basis of what I know about germs and viruses from my days at Clorox. They do a great job of really being risk averse because they want to protect people, and so I really respect that about the brand. I do think that this is going to continue on for a while because it's hard to kill that type of virus. And so going back to this concept of trust, I think the economy is not going to resume back to quote unquote normal until people have trust in the environments that they're going into, that they're putting themselves into. So that might mean going to the grocery store more frequently. I only go every other week if I absolutely have to. If I try to stretch it out for 3 weeks. Going to like shopping center just to randomly purchase something that you don't need. I think that that's not going to continue to grow at the rates that we had seen pre-COVID until consumers start to feel comfortable and they trust that others are looking out for them and creating a safe environment. I think second to that, essential goods are going to continue to grow. You're going to continue to consume food. You're going to continue to need toilet paper. You're going to continue to need these basic things. It's that extra spending goods or doing those frivolous things like, yes, I need an extra 3 pairs of jeans. I don't know why, but I must have them. And I must have that really expensive purse because why? It's really cute purse and I must have it. I'll surely wear it someday. I just don't think that that type of spending is going to continue or resume for another little bit. I do think that Salesforce is well positioned because the products that we create are designed to help people work more efficiently and effectively. And particularly now where we are working remotely and consumers' expectations are growing about their shopping experience or their customer service experience, we can help connect the data points. And my product in particular helps really connect systems within one another, even if they're not the same type of system. And so without getting too nerdy into it, it really comes down to we're going to help enable some of these companies get to work faster so that they can respond. So as governments say, okay, now you can do curbside pickup, now you can do drive-by pickup, now you can start scheduling appointments, and this is the cadence or how you schedule your hourly labor. We have products that will help you do that. And Salesforce just launched a product called Work.com, which is just that. And it's helping companies and governments build systems around how do you communicate when an employee is sick and they've been at work. how do you deploy communication back out to other people to say, hey, John came to work and he was sick, or there was someone at work that was sick. You likely worked in that shift. You might need a quarantine. And so there's a lot to be figured out with respect to HIPAA laws and state by state nuances. But I do think that tools like that are super empowering. And it just comes down to making the data that's out there powerful so that we can live better lives.
There you go. No, I like that, Patty. That's very insightful. That's very insightful. So with the title of our show, Actions and Limits, we like to ask our guests, what would you say is one action that we can take or implement in our lives that can really make a big difference, whether it's personal or business?
Being open. When you think about someone reaching out to you, whether it's LinkedIn or a friend of a friend or someone just trying to have a small conversation with you, be open to it. Just, if they're willing to share, listen. And also be willing to share, because it's through that we can make a connection, especially these days.
I like that. That's some good advice there. And the opposite side of that are these limits that we place on ourselves. What would you say is one limit that you see that we need to remove from what we do?
It's a tough one. Actually, no, it's easy. Telling ourselves that I can't.
I like that a lot.
This idea of like, I can't do it. I think asking yourself, what facts do I have that support this idea that I can't? And if you do find something that factually says, okay, it aligns with, no, I really can't, then brainstorm ideas of what would need to be true in order for this to actually be possible.
I like that a lot. I think that's very powerful. Realizing that, whatever the conditions are right now, maybe you can't, but how can you align yourself and what pieces can you move around to get it to where you can? That's great, Patty. That's very insightful stuff. So, Patty, you were such a pleasure having on the show. Thank you so much for joining us on the podcast. You were such a great guest, and a lot of insight and humor. And I know you and Paul getting to catch up too, was good. So thank you so much.
Can I just tell you that when Paul and I worked together, Paul had this thing about name tags.
Oh, no, you're going to go there. Okay.
I'm going to go there. Surely, Justin, he's never told you this, but he hated the fact that he had to wear name tags because he didn't like the idea that people would know that his name is Paul. So he didn't want a stranger coming up to him and saying, hey, Paul, where can I find more ketchup? Or, hey, Paul, can you point me to the restrooms? He just hated this idea. And every day I'd say, okay, Paul, we'd go through this check of like, you come on stage and you make sure that your costume check was all good. Like, I would say, I don't know, keep me honest, Paul. I would say 1 out of 7 times you'd show up and I'd be like, Paul, where's your name tag?
Yeah, but I would also have another name on it, and you would bust me on that too. Like I would have Rick or Steve, and you're like, no, put your real name on there.
Yeah. I don't know where you got these random ones from, but yeah.
From costuming, I would ask, hey, there's some random name tags, and I go, hey, I like that name. Can I have that?
So resourceful.
Yeah.
Now he wants people calling him by name. Now he's like, now
I love it. Please know my name, Paul. Please. I'm shouting from the mountaintops. Paul Fortune. Paul Fortune.
It's a complete shift. It's a complete shift.
Yes. Good example of how you don't always have to be who you used to be. We evolve and change, and I'm so glad to see you finally coming out of your shell, Paul.
Thank you. I was really shy when I first met you. Now I'm out in the open.
Look at you.
Yeah. Paul was shy. Is that?
No, I was being sarcastic.
Well, Patty, again, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insight with us. And it was great to have you.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a great day.
Paty was such a great guest. I know she's a personal friend of yours you've known for a while. I feel like she had some really good insight, both, business wise and on the personal side, being able to have that somewhat, work-life balance, and then her idea of like just her driving force behind a lot of the goals that she has. So I really enjoyed having her on the show. I think she had a lot of great stuff to share.
Yeah, absolutely. You know what struck me about her is when I asked her about a role model and she brought up Walt Disney. And then she thought, well, down the road, I really, been motivating myself, just different things. And she was saying that she had that conversation with her husband saying, you always want more, you always want more. And one of the biggest sayings that Walt Disney had is, Disneyland will never be complete. We will always change and improve. So even though that she says that Walt Disney wasn't a driving force toward, now in her career, it still is, because that's Walt Disney's mantra. You can always improve. You can always get better, and she's implying that. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Yeah, and it's true, right? I really think about it as well. If you're done learning, if you're done improving yourself, then you're sliding backwards. You're behind the curve already. If you've decided, I've learned enough, I'm done. So that constant improvement. There is a balance there. I've heard people talk about that too, with entrepreneurs and business people. It's like that constant drive, like chasing the carrot. Every once in a while, you have to take a break, right? Be like, hey, let's take a break.
But I think more than that, like with that personality where you're always like looking ahead, which is awesome. That's an awesome way to be if that's your personality. If that's not your personality, that's different. That's fine too. Everybody's personality is different. But if you have that personality where you're always constantly wanting to change and improve, which is awesome, you also have to enjoy the journey, enjoy the process of right now, the being present. I think that's so important, because you don't want to get to the point where, you could be, extremely successful. You could go, to the top of the mountain. But if you never enjoyed any moment of it, that kind of sucks. You know what I mean? You're like, you're here on the mountain, but you were so worried about getting to the top of the mountain, you didn't enjoy the process of getting to the top of the mountain. So I think that is, for anything, is enjoying the present, enjoying that journey.
Yeah, and I think she did touch on that, really like being in the present moment and being able to like step away and go, hey, let's put down our phones, and let's enjoy each other's company, rather than, being distracted by work or whatnot. And just that compartmentalization, that's the way she described it, right? But I think it's really about like honing in on what you're doing in the moment.
Yeah.
And that journey, whatever that is. If you're 100% on work right now, great. If you're 100% on the conversation with your spouse, great. But enjoy that moment. I think that's really key, and I think Paty really nailed that.
Yeah, she definitely enjoys the moment for sure. She definitely has perspective. With her, what I like about her mostly is she's not about excuses. She's never was. Ever since I've known her as a teenager, she was never about excuses. And like I mentioned to her, she got into UCLA. I want to say it was like Berkeley. She was listing off the scrolls that she got accepted to, and she made it sound like, la-di-da, doesn't everybody get into that? I'm like, no, not everybody gets into that. That's a lot of work that you put into to get to that level, and knowing a little bit of the background of her family, that's why I wanted to bring her on, because she could have went, as I told her, she could have went the opposite way. She could have gone into drugs and poor relationships and stuff like that, but she never did. She was always on the straight and narrow, always looking to improve herself. So I have a lot of respect for her, and proud to call her my friend.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I'm glad she brought up that little story about you and name tags.
She had to go there.
All right. Well, let's wrap up the show with another segment of Ask Paul Anything. Make sure to continue to submit your questions to Ask Paul Anything at actionsandlimits@gmail.com to have your questions featured on the show. This one, Paul, comes from Alex in New York. And it says, Paul, do you have any ridiculous goals in life?
ridiculous goals. Now, when somebody says ridiculous, I mean, I don't know if they're talking about like does that mean lofty or just some silly goal that you want to have?
Go with however you want to interpret that question.
I feel like I answered it the opposite way, meaning answer a high level goal. So I'm not going to go there this time. I'll just go with kind of a kind of ridiculous, silly type of goal that I would want to have, and that would be I would want to go to Mount Rushmore, and I just want to go there just for as a joke, going it's a long way to get to Mount Rushmore, right? And just go, oh, there it is, bye, take a picture, and then just leave. Not spend the night there, not do anything, and just leave. Just because of I think that's kind of funny. Like people talk about that with the Grand Canyon. They look at the Grand Canyon, oh, there it is, now let's leave. So I think I want to do the same thing. I want to go to Mount Rushmore for 30 minutes. Not even that. I just want to take a picture of Mount Rushmore. Maybe do a selfie with Mount Rushmore and go, okay, I'm out. I'm going to go somewhere else. So that would be my silly, ridiculous goal that I would want to do.
So for you, would you enjoy the journey there and back?
Yeah, I mean, in my head, I would fly. I mean, because you probably can't get a straight flight, so I'm sure there's some moving about that I'll have to do. But I enjoy airports. I've always have. I love airports. I love some of the seats. I have my charger for my phone. I can read a book. I read, on my phone. If I want to have a drink or watch sports, I'm there. There's a lot of cool people to look at, to talk to. So I enjoy airplanes, airports. Yeah, so the journey would be fun.
All right. Well, thank you for submitting your question, Alex. I love these. I never know how you're going to answer these, Paul. I could. It's hard to guess sometimes. So
yeah, it's hard to guess for me, because I'm off the cuff too. I'm just I have to come up with an answer, so I have to really think real quick. What do I want to do? So
well, another great show, Paul. Another great guest. So yeah, great show.
For Justin Atherton, this is Paul Fortune. We'll see you next week.
All right, see you next month.
Thank you for listening to the show. Don't miss an episode. Click and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Follow us on your favorite podcast platform and find us on Instagram and Facebook under Actions and Limits to stay updated on all our upcoming content. Continue to email the show at actionsandlimits@gmail.com for our segment Ask Paul Anything. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next week.